Hello everyone, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host, Sidewinder. We're going to be taking a look at a game between MελλάδαToD, who is the blue Protoss down here in the bottom left of Xel'Naga Caverns, versus MελλάδαStephano in the top right. Millennium is a like a pro team, so this is a little bit higher level broadcast than what I usually broadcast, but just thought I'd download it, give it a look, and see if this game turned out to be any good. This is on Xel'Naga Caverns, which is a pretty standard map. You'll see a ton of games on this. It is not the MLG version, which has a supply depot right there. But a lot of the times, I think people would say that this actually does favor Zerg, for the reason that there's huge open entryways into the natural and multiple entryways into the natural. So we will see what unfolds in this game. Getting right into it, starting off, ToD with a really interesting pylon placement here right at the natural gas. So looks like he's going for a quick wall-in to take a quick expansion, and this is part of the Protoss versus Zerg metagame that's really been evolving lately. It's kind of turned into Zergs have been able to fast expand, and Protosses have just not been able to break that or make them pay for it. It's just led to Zergs getting huge advantages, and eventually just boiling down to Zergs just rushing in roaches and Zerglings to the point where a Protoss can't outproduce them, so they eventually fall. ToD will throw down a forge to start this off, which is it's very unusual to see it on this map because of the amount of buildings you really need to close this off. What you'll typically do is you'll see a expansion right there, and then you'll see buildings trailing down to the expansion that wall it off, so that if a Zergling force is trying to get into your main or on this mineral line, they'd have to go all the way around, and you can usually like wall off some or use some pylons to wall off down here, and usually wall in this back entryway to prevent any Zergling run-ins or anything like that. And we do see a quick photon cannon going down here at the natural, so we'll see what happens with this game as it develops. ToD actually opting to go for a spawning pool first, and he's likely going to be getting speed on those Zerglings as soon as he gets 100 gas from his extractor. So this is what they like to call a speed limit expand. Usually we'll get that 100 gas on the way. You'll start speed, then you'll move these drones back over to minerals, as you can see them already doing, and then you'll usually see an expansion come down at about 21. It's helpful to have those Zerglings out to fight off a probe that might be blocking your expansion here, and indeed we are going to see Stephano drop that expansion at 20, or now I guess he's waiting for minerals here, so yeah, about on the time frame we were talking about. Really fast expansion coming up here for ToD, so you have to wonder if these two obviously are practice partners, if they are on the same pro team, if they are just going to be testing out strategies here, and if we're going to see a little bit of an unusual game as opposed to seeing more of the standard stuff in like tournaments or typical pro games against one another. So these Zerglings are going to poke in here, see if they can try to cancel this Nexus. Obviously they won't be able to in time. They are going to try to get this photon cannon down, which this cannon's just out of range. He's going to have to cancel it and put down another cannon here, so these Zerglings already being annoying, already trying to work on this pylon, and if he's not careful, he is actually going to lose this pylon because he does not have reinforcements on the field. He does have one Zealot coming out of his gate, which is getting chrono boosted, but it's not going to be in time to stop this pylon from falling, so he's also going to have to cancel this cannon in all likelihood. So the Zerglings take that down. You can see from the pylon placement he attempted before was not going to actually reach this photon cannon due to that recent patch. So a little bit of inconvenience there for Protoss players, know all about that kind of stuff. And this cannon is going to be reached in all likelihood by this pylon. It's just a little weird to see it warped in unpowered. More Zerglings kind of streaming in here, just going to try to be annoying on this expansion. And I would imagine you're probably going to see Roach Warren coming up here soon, pretty soon for Stephano, if he wants to keep this pressure on or if he's going to go for more of an eco build. So we do see a evolution chamber almost done. It's going to be for any sort of air shenanigans or detection for Dark Templars. These Zerglings are going to get a run by into the main, so this is really bad. He's going to have to pull probes in order to deal with this. These are speed Zerglings that are a lot harder to deal with. These probes kind of on an odd rally point, and this Zealot is trying to chase him around. He is going to get surrounded and go down, so that is very bad for the Protoss player already. You can see what the risk is of opening up like this, so the Zerglings got in there very easily. This Stalker is a very terrible matchup for these Zerglings in terms of on the Protoss side, so I don't know why these Zerglings are being so hesitant, but the other issue is that if they go in here and they surround the Stalker, these probes will turn around and fight off the Zerglings fairly well. So we're just going to see these Zerglings poking in here, getting a couple probe kills here and there, checking the units lost. We're going to see 3 workers down for the Protoss player, so he is already a little bit behind. And we're going to still see these Zerglings being annoying. Still only 4 left. He does need to get another Zealot on the field, I would like to see, but he does instead opt for a Stalker since there's only a few more Zerglings. He really needs to wipe this out sooner rather than later. He's also being annoying by getting those probes off gas, so you have to manually reassign them. So very, very good Zergling play here from Stephano. ToD having a hard time responding to it. He finally does clean out the infection in his base that is Zerglings. Checking back into the Zerg part of the map, he's going to be throwing down a macro hatch, so you have to imagine he's going to be committing to these Zerglings rather heavily. He's also getting +1 attack for those Zerglings, and Protoss is actually going to go for a robotics facility. So this is a interesting transition, as robotics facility units aren't good against a lot of Zerglings, especially if you're putting out Immortals instead of Colossus. And Colossus is not going to be on the field for another couple minutes because of the build time on the robotics bay. So he's going to be in a little bit of an awkward position here, but you can see his income is keeping up fairly even with the Zerg. Had he not lost those workers, which is now 5, he would be relatively in line, but the Zerg can just put out drones so much faster than any other race. You can see he's now at 51. Really, he's about ready to take his 3rd if he decides to, or he would have a very healthy economy in order to try to push off of this. And he knows the Protoss player isn't going to have a whole lot on the field because he saw all the production that he had. He was in his base forever and was able to delay all that. So at this point in the game, Stephano is going to be ahead by a fair amount. He is putting out 12 Zerglings right now and getting his level 2 attack on the way. Ventral Sex coming up, which is Overlord dropping. So, and he did have a Baneling's Nest coming up, so I'm wondering if we're going to see some Baneling drops here on the mineral lines, or if he's just going to try to surround these units with Zerglings and then drop on their heads. Either way is a very tough place for Protoss to be. I mean, you can already tell by the way I'm casting this game that Protoss are really having a hard time with Zerg lately, and there's so many tools at the Zerg's disposal, and I personally think those have always been there, but the Zerg are just finally realizing the power of all those and finally putting them all into their arsenal. Checking the APM tab, the Zerg player's APM is higher than the Protoss player because Zerg is a little bit tougher race to play, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of others. So yeah, I mean, those tools have always been there for Zerg, but it's hard to execute them because of how much attention they take, in addition to like spreading creep and all those things like that. We're going to see Zerglings come in and try and engage. He is just poking around though, checking for a 3rd. There's not going to be a 3rd found, so looks like he was just going to try to deny expansions, try to keep his lead in economy. We can see the Harvesters are now about equal in terms of army on the field. Protoss player is a little bit ahead in terms of value, but it depends on the units that they have out. He does just have a lot of Stalkers and a few Sentries, so in terms of just straight up army versus army, you would likely see the Zerg player win because of the upgrades on those Zerglings and because of how many Zerglings are going to be surrounding all of these defenseless Stalkers and whatnot. There will be a few force fields to kind of try and break them off, but still I think the Protoss player would have a hard time fighting that off. The Zerg player is just expanding like crazy too, so there's an expansion here at the 3rd, another expansion here at the goal, and we see 36 Zerglings coming down, which is a huge number, and Colossus are finally hitting the field. First one does walk out and step all over those probes, so he's going to have a little bit better chance against this mass Zergling army because this Colossus is going to splash all over him. And if these Zerglings' armor is not upgraded, which it's not, those Colossus can almost kill those Zerglings in one hit. Now that his +1 is done, though, they will kill them in one hit, so that's a very good splash on the Zerglings, and I would imagine you're probably going to see some Zergling armor coming down. And here we go, he's loading up all of his Banelings into his Overlord, so we are going to see some drops on top of the Protoss player's army, or on top of the Protoss player's mineral line, or both. So if we get a chance to see this drop, that will be a good display of how you Zerg players should learn from these better players, because these Baneling drops are so hard to deal with because the Protoss player just does not have a good answer for shooting down a lot of Overlords. Yes, he does have 11 Stalkers on the field, but it takes a lot longer to kill Overlords than it seems. Here come a bunch of Zerglings in here going to try to deny this 3rd, but this Colossus is going to push us away. Yeah, you can see him one-shotting those Zerglings and taking them down in a nice fiery ball of death. Checking over here, this is going to be an interesting engagement. Good force fields coming in to prevent this around. He's going to try and drop these Banelings on top of him. He does land and kill about 4 or 5 Zealots. He's trying to land it on as much of the army as possible, and look at that. He just He flies his overlords in, and it's almost like he just pressed the delete key and all of his army was gone. So that's a really good engagement for the Zerg player. And look at all these Zerglings just free to run around. He is going to just run right into the mineral line or right past it into the main. He does choose to run right past it. The Colossus is out of position. He is splitting up his Zerglings now. Good warp in here to try and block this ramp. So at least minimizing the damage in the main. These probes are helpless, so they're going to have to run away. A ton more Zerglings streaming in here, 22 on the way, and there are already 86 on the field. So this is a huge committal to this attack from the Zerg player. He is ahead in supply, so we'll see how the Protoss player handles this, since he is severely behind an army right now. This third also getting harassed, so very good work with these Zerglings to try and split them up. 26 Banelings are being morphed right now, I would imagine, underneath these Overlords or somewhere near, no, up over here. And I would imagine this is going to be another drop since he is moving his Overlords into position. This is why, as Protoss, you really need to put out an observer to check for things like Overlord speed. If he has Overlord speed, it's almost a guarantee that he's going to go for some kind of a drop play. So keep active with your observers if you're a Protoss. And for Zerg, if you can help it, get a good surround with these Zerglings or with like Infest or Fungal Growths to hold their army in position, so you can just drop Banelings all over the top of them. Here we go. Protoss player is moving out. He does have 3 Colossus, which is a very respectable amount to fight off those Zerglings, but it's not going to do a whole lot in preventing Banelings from dropping. It will hurt them pretty badly when Colossus hits them, so this is a fair number of Colossus to try to ward this off. So good work from the Protoss player in order to try and stave off elimination here. Zerg player running into the third. He's going to deny a few probes from mining, but the Colossus comes in here and just fries them all up. Overlord's moving in for the drop. We're going to see if he gets some good drops off here. This Colossus does go down. As far as I can tell, there's just too many Overlords in the way. Just dropping everywhere. This is such good micro on these Overlords, and you can see the Protoss player's army is just gone. So Zerg's banking a lot of minerals behind this too. If those Banelings go off, he's going to land a lot of kills, but he doesn't get far enough in. Wow, the Protoss player's economy is getting a little bit worn down here from all these drops, from all this Zergling harassment. There's just not a whole lot he can do. I'd like to see him get something like Blink on these Stalkers, which he has not researched, not even started, in order to try and keep up with these Overlords. You can see he could probably shoot down all these Overlords if he had reinforcements and if he had Blink on those Stalkers. So the income tab will show the Zerg just crushing the Protoss player, almost, well, more than double his income right now. So you can see this aggressive expansion style while keeping the Protoss player pinned in his base is really going to help out an observer, that's the word, is finally in the Zerg base getting a look at what's going on. There's a bunch of Corruptors on the field to take down those Colossus. This many Corruptors will take down Colossus pretty fast, especially since he knows he does not have a lot of defense against this. In terms of Stalker support, he has 6 Stalkers on the field, and those Corruptors have a ton of health. Another expansion going up here on the left side for Stephano. A little bit of another push in with these Zerglings, Banelings, and Corruptors. We're going to see what kind of engagement angle he favors here. He does not have a very large army right now, and he is banking quite a bit of resources, so you have to imagine this is very difficult to manage all this all at the same time. Zerg's going to try to run in here and deny this expansion. Colossus come over and they're going to be roasting up those Zerglings. Look at all those bodies going down. But the Corruptors are doing some work on these Colossus. You'd like to see him just separate the Zerglings away from these Corruptors so that the Corruptors can do their work and the Zerglings will not just get one-shotted by all those Colossus. Colossus does fall with pieces and entrails all over the place. These Corruptors have done their job, but the bad thing is that you can always, or it's easy to overcommit to Corruptors and produce too many when they don't shoot ground units, so that's also bad. Zerglings are still being annoying, a few of them getting into the main. There's not a lot of mining going on here anyway, so this, for all intents and purposes, is not really much of a reason to be in here anymore, except for to grab the remainder of this gas. Stalkers are trying to take out some of these Overlords, which is, I mean, it's okay, but it doesn't supply block Stephano since his army is so disposable. So just run them all in there and drop them off. And you can see the creep spreading is actually preventing the Protoss player from taking his gold right now, which I'm sure he definitely wants to do, since he is now mining on 2 bases. His natural is almost mined out, and this third is being worked on. It'll last him for a little while, but he definitely needs to get another base up, whether it's right here or on the right side expansion.